So let it be written, so let it be done. I am Tim, and you are watching Tabletop Terrors. And welcome. If you're brand new to Tabletop Terrors, we're all about creativity and helping people be more creative and finding happiness through that. And we use tabletop games to do it. So, this is Daily Damage. It's a live weekday vlog. If you want a more produced video with edits and stuff, this isn't that. So go find some of our other videos. It's a live chat, which means I'm gonna interact with you as you watch, as we talk. So I'm gonna do my best to read the comments and make sure that you know what I'm seeing on the comment screen as I read these things. But what's today's topic? Well, we're gonna talk about why you would want to stat out or make a stat block for a big, mythical, legendary villain. And basically talking directly about our big bad called the Dismembered Lord. And just to give you a quick boilerplate rundown, in the realm of Dragongrin, the Dismembered Lord has beaten the forces of good. He is a chrono lich that steals days and is a pseudo-immortal in a way. And so he is as much the setting as he is a creature or a villain. And so Lloyd Collins, Jarl DM, asked a question, and he was being very serious, and he was just like, hey, and I'm actually gonna read that question to you now. But first, let's check the chat. Who's hanging out today? Hey, Prue Prue's here. Extreme Vlog, what's going on? I love you, Extreme Vlog says. I love you too, but I feel the need to see other people. Lawrence Kentworthy's here. What's going on? What you looking at? He who stats while he chats. Dude, what you looking at? You are the best at that. Warmaker777, my man. Rufus Demand. Sup, dudes? Sup, Rufus? The Command Tent. Hey, y'all. The Giggleberry says, greetings, everyone. Rob from Performance Check, who, stop what you're doing. After this chat, I want you to go to the Performance Check YouTube channel and first of all, subscribe. But second of all, watch his Star Wars game. He just ran yesterday. It's awesome. It's amazing. His Rhodian language is like from the films. So, check it out. It's a really good game. And I actually watched that yesterday while I was working on stat blocks for the Dismembered Lord. So, it's kind of cool. Joshua Rivera's here. He says, howdy, Tim. Performance Check says, late is the hour that Connie chose to appear. Shaman Bill, new guy. What's going on, Shaman Bill? You're not new anymore. You're welcome, and you're part of the family. You're a Tabtarian now. It's automatic. Welcome to the family. Warmaker777 says, in the words of Noah Antweiler, if you stat it, they will kill it. Yes. I didn't realize he coined that phrase. I swear, I would guess that that phrase has been around since D&D. And Josh Hull says, I'm still jazzing about last week's races chat. So many ideas. Oh, thanks. I got to finish up with the specialty races. And so, and Prue Prue says, Rob is really annoyingly good at what he does. That's a good way to put it. I have some notes here. So the first thing I'm going to do is read the question from Jarl DM. Lloyd Collins also has a wonderful YouTube channel. He says, so as I understand it, the Dismembered Lord is a Sauron-like figure in Dragongrin, except that he actually won. What purpose does it serve to include his stats in the game? Dragongrin is an evil has won setting, right? So is he statted there so that the players can potentially win Dragongrin? And then he followed up by saying, he's like, I'm not being snarky. He's like, I want to really talk about this and have a discussion. And I feel like it's going to be a good one because I have a few different bullet points here. I want to say this. We did not come to this decision lightly. So, statting out the Dismembered Lord was something we went back and forth on for a while. With that said, we landed on putting his stat block in the book, but there's a lot to that, so I want to talk to you about it. The number one reason that I wanted to stat out the Dismembered Lord is a selfish one. But it's this. Someone is going to stat him out. So I want that someone to be me. Right? Meaning, there will be probably an infinite amount of stat blocks for the Dismembered Lord. One of the cool, fun things is going to be making your own and reskinning monsters and stuff like that. But if we decided not to include a stat block, someone else would have. So I want to throw my take, absolute Tabletop's take, on that stat block out there. So that's the first reason. Selfishly, someone's gonna do it, so I wanna have a hand in it. I wanna do it in a creative way. And we're gonna talk about that a little later in the stream, which is, okay, we decided to do it, how do you do it? In a way that's meaningful, okay? And Rob says, thanks, Tim, glad you enjoyed the game. Stoked to learn more about these stats. And the Giggleberry says, good call, makes sense. So the second thing is, okay, in this book that we're creating, it's called A Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin. It is the campaign setting guide for our world of Dragongrin. We are going to include a small write-up about not statting out the Dismembered Lord. What to do if you don't want to, if you want to have him as an omnipresent evil and not including it. So, our thought process was, why not include our opinions on both methods in the same book and give you options rather than choosing one or the other? So that's the second reason why we statted him out, because you don't have to use the stats. The entire book is focused around making this your own Dragongrin. Okay? So the idea here is, if we include multiple ways to run the Dismembered Lord, I feel like that's a better, more well-rounded book than if we just choose one or the other. So the second reason for statting out the Dismembered Lord is because you don't have to use those stats, but they can be a good guideline and benchmark for anyone who does want to use those stats. Let's see here. Warmaker777 says, you could always have his stats say he will basically just respawn after a defined amount of time. I'll stop you right there, they do. They actually do, and we'll go into that a little later, but it's also, I'm not sure if you can hear that, there's a plane going overhead, but it's also a matter of how we do it. And we're gonna talk about our reasoning and our logic and what we're going for in statting him out, because we don't want it to also be an arbitrary stat block. So let's see here. And what you're looking at says, question, even if he's statted out and someone fights him, he's a Chrono Lich. Couldn't he just have a bunch of hymns show up from different times? Potentially. I mean, thematically, I'd like to think that every Dismembered Lord in every timeline has their own aims and reasons. And in the same way that I have my own crap going on, I can't just pop into another dimension and help alternate me because I got my own stuff cooking. It's possible, but it's probably not probable, but as a GM, you could have that happen. And we're gonna provide you with the tools to do that. So remind me what you're looking at, of how to have alternate, multiple Dismembered Lords pop in. Performance check says, the Dismembered Lord being statted takes me back to my 3.5 days. He says, he's basically talking about, he fought Erethniel, Vecna, I tricked Asmodeus and punched Baelor in the face. Epic stats make epic encounters. Exactly. And this obviously wouldn't be something that would be easy to get to in the first place. It's not like the Dismembered Lord is just sitting in a field somewhere where you can just march up and go, hey, buddy. You have to get through probably a pool of near infinite resources even to get close. And Prue says, God punching for the win. The command tent says, but have you developed a killer in-character voice for the Dismembered Lord? When or if the players meet him? No, have purposefully stayed away from that, similar to Bill Watterson's Calvin and Hobbes, which is, Bill Watterson never wanted Calvin and Hobbes to become an animated film or go into any like sort of cartoon media, because he said it exists. The comic strip of Calvin and Hobbes exists perfectly in that format, and porting it over to any other format would dilute the essence of the comic strip format. In that same way, if pressed, you know, I would probably just rip off Josh Brolin's Thanos from Avengers Infinity War. I mean, measured, calculated, tasty. But I have not purposefully, I have not approached what voice I would use for the Dismembered Lord. And so here's the third reason. The third reason is, this is a book about a chrono lich who has multiple aspects. So our intention is to do something very, very cool, or at least we think it's cool. As of now, and this isn't a promise for what will actually appear in the book, because it depends on what we kickstart for and if there will be art for this stuff and all that, but as of now, there are drafts of docs for the following. And this is the cool part. This is kind of the meat and potatoes. And what you're looking at, this is also how you could have multiple Dismembered Lords show up, and it's super easy. Okay, so if you flip to the theoretical Dismembered Lord section of the book, after you get a blurb and some background and some history and all that stuff, you come to the stat blocks. The first stat block that you'll see is the Dismembered Lord, Lich of Stolen Days. Okay, so this stat block is the Dismembered Lord Prime. I mean, it's gonna be 3 or 4 pages, but we're trying to make it so that it's also cool to run. And I'm gonna talk a little bit how and what's included in that stat block in just a bit. But following that are 4 different aspects of the Dismembered Lord. These are basically alternate universe versions so that you can run your own Dismembered Lord and have archetypical stat blocks that sort of match. So, the next one is the Dismembered Lord. Instead of being called the Lich of Stolen Days, he's the Brutal Abomination. The Brutal Abomination is a warrior archetype. And I'll give you the spoiler now. The aspects of the Dismembered Lord that you're able to fight are the 4 core main old school classes of warrior, wizard, priest, and rogue. So the second, after you flip through Lich of Stolen Days, you flip through Brutal Abomination, there's the Magus of Death and Time, which is like Arc Wizard. Then there's the Priest, who's the Dismembered Lord, the Icon of Pain. And then there's the Dismembered Lord, the Rogue, also known as the Thief of Eternity. Those different stat blocks will all be very, very flavorful, very, very different from one another. So that if you want to run the Lich of Stolen Days, sort of the Dismembered Lord Prime, that's like an epic environmental battle, you can. But for instance, it's going to have different legendary and lair actions than the Thief of Eternity. The Thief of Eternity, the Dismembered Lord essentially has, imagine this huge antique collection, like the Cave of Wonders in Aladdin, where he's like, he just steals a ton of stuff. What if a rogue became the Dismembered Lord is what it posits, right? So that's going to be different. So the way that we want to do it is, we're going to give you our Dismembered Lord Prime. Here he is, the Lich of Stolen Days. But pursuant to that, you flip the pages, it's those 4 different archetypes that you can run however you want. And then after that, maybe a page or a half page or whatever on how to run the Dismembered Lord with no stat block, i.e. not running him at all. You know, that kind of thing. So, let's go to the chat. All right. Mason Zilla says, after they statted out the Lord of the Nazgul in the upcoming Adventures of Middle-earth book. Oh, they did stat him. I have to check that out. That's a good thing for inspiration. Let's see, what you looking at? John Harrow says, since he's such a central figure in the destiny of Dragongrin, I think it makes sense to stat him so that you can accurately direct what is happening in Dragongrin. It's a fair point. Warmaker 777, there's a homebrew class called the Time Walker or something. There are actually rules for time clones. The more you have, the less powerful you are, etc. Oh, that's cool. Josh Holes, are you creating a list of legendary actions for the Dismembered Lord? Yes. Each Dismembered Lord's aspect, including Prime, will have their own legendary actions and their own lair actions as well. For flavor. What you're looking at says, if I knew a group of ne'er-do-wells would show up and try to stop my plans at a certain date, I would take some time every month to pop to that day, shoot some spells, and then come back. So here's the idea. Though the Dismembered Lord, and this is very important, though the Dismembered Lord is a Chrono Lich, he does steal days, he does control time, he is very selfish, and he's an egotistical creature that believes that his existence is paramount. So, it's not so easy in a rickety balancing timeline that he's patched together with stolen days to just time travel. That's one of the things as a framing device and as a plot device that we included so that there can't be just a ton of time travel hankiness. It's difficult and dangerous for him to time travel. I've used the analogy before of like, it's like jumping from rowboat to rowboat on very rough waters. It's doable, but you only do it if you need to. Ben Buckner, woo, hey Tim. Lawrence Kentworthy says, let's get to the real question. How much HP does this Dismembered Lord have? Depends on the aspect. Right now in the dock, there's a version of him with 625 hit points. And we'll play test it and we'll kind of go from there. But, you know, and we'll talk about how do you figure out, you know, there's a version that's got like 400 and some odd. There's a version that has 360, but that version does a little more life drain, stuff like that. So we're working on multiple stat blocks at once, but that comes to this. And this, I think, is the core, which is he is a lich. He is a lich. So I want to read this to you. The reason why we're statting him is because it's almost more tragic. It's almost more awful that you kill him and then this happens. Bits of the Dismembered Lord's essence are hidden away in various time streams and realities in phylacteries known as the Reliquaries of Ash. In addition, in Dragongrin, a piece of his essence is in each of the constructs known as the War Makers. They act as powerful, weaponized phylacteries. So long as a single piece of his essence remains, a slain Dismembered Lord gains a new body in 1d10 days, regaining all of his hit points and essences, and becoming active again. The new body appears within 5 feet of any active War Maker or Reliquary of Ash that the Dismembered Lord chooses. So, you could work for 5 campaigns to kill him, and unless you've killed every other aspect or essence of him, in 1d10 day, he's gonna be back. So that's terrible. But think about what that means. That means that theoretically you could get this book, and when you hear about those gaming groups who have, you know, basically gamed for like 10 years in the same campaign, you could do this. You could game in Dragongrin for 10 years, hunting down every aspect and essence of the Dismembered Lord. And remember this too, and I wanted to kind of make this point to Lloyd as well, which is he is not a Sauron. He is very archetypical, but he is not a Sauron. He is not a Cthulhu. And I wrote this out. He is a flawed, powerful human man. He should be really hard to kill, but killable. And the conundrum of Dragongrin is this, and Matt Click brought this up, and it's brilliant. Firstly, how many pieces of himself does he have hidden somewhere? And secondly, if he does die, if the Chrono Lich who is keeping the weave of stitched time together on this realm perishes, how does the timeline that he's cobbled together stay together? Basically, if you kill the Dismembered Lord, are you dooming Dragongrin to just be destroyed? And so that is why. That is why we sat out of the Dismembered Lord, for all of those reasons. Now, we're going to check the chat, and we're going to talk about how. How do you stat him out at a very high level, design-wise and feel? All of this is very subject to change, but it's fun to talk about. All right, back up. Oh, what you're looking at says Icon of Pain. Masonzilla. The heroes will burst into the door, and precisely enough, for me to finish my tea and scones with 5 seconds. He's like, oh, here they come. Hold on, I got to take care of this real quick. Rufus says, just use all the abilities like a boss. Josh Rivera says, so is there one to rule them all? Your Dismembered Lord is the prime Dismembered Lord. So I don't know if you guys have caught on to this yet, but what this means is that everyone who owns a copy of this book is making their own version of Dragongrin. It's your own timeline, and they all exist in the same universe, in my headcanon. Which means that every table across the world who's playing a campaign in Dragongrin, that's the prime Dragongrin to them. But as this meta framing device, it means that if I make a character and play in Barker's Dragongrin, and then I jump over to Matt's Dragongrin, it's going to be very different, but by design, they all exist in the same campaign world. Like universe, there are all these different timelines. So we're making it so that everybody can make their own, and it's canon. I just really love that. So Josh, to answer your question, is there one to rule them all? Well, everybody thinks their Dismembered Lord's the prime one. I mean, but it's a matter of which one's the most powerful, and which one's the smartest, and which one's able to hold it together. What you're looking at says, got ya. Limits craziness while adding structure. Exactly. He's talking about the difficulties of time hopping and all that kind of stuff. It's possible, but it's not easy. Time hopping is a lot like in Days of Yore, when Lewis and Clark went across to find California. It's like, nobody's just like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. It's like, okay, we can do this. The Giggleberry says, man, I love that. John Hurrow says, why is he human? Because I think it is far more terrifying for a human. And in your world, he could be a dwarf, he could be an elf, but I think human, to me, signifies humanity. So even in a world of fantastical races, when I think of a human, I think of mankind. I'm able to correlate with that. And I feel that an evil who's driven by their own sadistic ego and their own selfish whims is terrifying. I think it's, in some ways, it's arguable that it's more terrifying than a monster. Oh, so Warmaker777 says, I imagine he's more like if Darth Vader became a demigod, if not a god. Right. So what you're looking at says, there's a potential that you'd want to capture the Dismembered Lord and imprison him, a la Magneto. Sure, if you can pull it off. So, how do you stat him right? What was our reasoning? What do we kind of do? Now, obviously, this is all wet cement. We just really started digging into this. By the way, if you're enjoying this, if you like these, hit the subscribe button, and that way you won't miss any. Whether you can catch them live or not, they'll pop up in your video stream. And if you push the little bell, it should alert you whenever I go live, so you can hop in and be part of the conversation. So, this is very high level stuff, very just kind of talking it through, getting it on the page, but the idea is we want the fight with the Dismembered Lord to be more like a boss fight in a raid. Think WoW, like World of Warcraft, or think Destiny, where there are different patterns in a way, but there's more these kind of different stages. And so what we're kind of working with right now are these things called essences, where if you start the Dismembered Lord, first you have to destroy his essence of time, then you have to destroy his essence of the bleak, and then the last vestiges that are left are his essences of flesh. And so those are at different hit point totals, and as you do that, he loses certain abilities and gains others, that kind of thing, or it triggers events. But things like just these really cool lair actions, like summoning War Makers and various things that just make it a crazy fight, but we also want to make sure that the mechanics make sense tonally. So like, here's one that I'm really proud of. There's one particular thing where if he hits you, because you know how he steals days, right? If he hits you, if you fail the save by more than, okay, whoop, you roll it, you fail the save. You then take the D20, roll it. This is separate to your saving throw. So anything that happens, happens. But then in addition to that, after everything's resolved, you roll the D20. Your character immediately ages by the number showing on the die. So if you roll a 20, you age 20 years instantly. If you roll a 5, you age 5 years. The Dismembered Lord gains equal to that amount in hit points. And so, just stuff like that, you know? Like, we're trying to do cool thematic stuff like that. All right. Warmaker777 says, honestly, you know what? I'm just going to call you Warmaker unless there's another Warmaker in the chat. Or no, just Warmaker7. Warmaker7 says, honestly, I plan on making a campaign where Vadis is in an alternate timeline trying to stop the Dismembered Lord from stealing the days from his timeline. It's perfect. Ben Buckner. What if the Dismembered Lord can banish someone to another timeline, like plane shift, but permanent? Absolutely. In fact, if there's an ability where basically once you destroy his essence of time, everyone has to make a save or be shifted, essentially, because the time, like, time blows up. And if you, and on the current rough version of the roll table are all of our different campaign worlds and our different books. So like, if you roll, you can get spit out to Aeronoth, or Kror, or Ankea, or Gloam, you know, that kind of stuff. And then Warmaker7 says, I agree, Tim. That's honestly why Hitler was so scary, for example. Not because of what he did only, but because a human did those things, right? Micah Peoples, is the Dismembered Lord available as someone to worship as a cleric, patron, or warlock? Yes, the answer is yes. Currently, we don't have any plans to put the mechanics for that in this book. One of the next books we kind of have cooking. Basically, we're on a long enough timeline, we'd love to do a Dragon Grin trilogy, where it's this first one is the campaign setting guide, the second one is a sort of monster manual, and or the third one, depending on the second and third order, would be an adventurer's guide. So you'd have a Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grin, which is campaign setting. You'd have Monstrum Aeternum, which is the monster manual. And then you'd have Brutal Champions, which would be like the adventurer's guide, which would be like kind of Sword Coast adventurer's guide kind of thing. So we're not muddying up this book with mechanics as far as we've decided right now, aside from maybe a few light ones and monster stat blocks, because we don't want to get into the sort of pit of having to playtest classes and subclasses yet, but that's something that we plan on doing in the future. Whew. Let's see here. So yes, all that to say, there'll be a breakout box, Micah, that'll be like, hey, use him as a patron, or, you know, there are, in fact, in the Adventure Kit, which is a book that we released on AbsoluteTabletop.com, there's an adventure kit called Oath of the Frozen King, and there is a Sarek in the back. It's one of the pieces of art, who is a paladin of the Dismembered Lord. Harry Pollitt of Two Guys TD&D says, thumbnails, man. Just trying to please. Xanos Nightshade says, what if the layers throughout different timelines that change in battle goes so his lair actions change? That's awesome. Andre says, I hope to see a bunch of game testing on these. We do plan on, so one of the things that's going to be different about our Kickstarter than I've seen about most RPG Kickstarters, if you pledge to the book, we'll decide what level that means and so on, but if you pledge to the book, you're going to be a part of what's known as the Living Production Diary. And that means that as we post, say, like, for instance, the stat block for the Dismembered Lord, it's not necessarily a play test. That is going to be a separate thing with forums and feedback. But only Kickstarter people, well, we'll see. The point is, we're going to drip feed you pieces of the book as it becomes available. So if there are a couple of regions done, we're going to feed you some of those regions, probably not in their entirety, but this way you don't have to wait a full year before you get the book and it shows up at your door and you're like, I'm inspired about 3 other things right now. then the book sits on your shelf. So all that to say, that would probably be something we would drip feed, like, hey, because, and I made a couple other notes here that I didn't really read, but the idea is that we wanted to make this super, super fun. We want people to try to do Dismembered Lord takedowns, Dismembered Lord speed runs. We want people to try to kill him because honestly, he's a Lich of Stolen Days and he's likely just going to come back in 1d10 days anyway. But how awesome would it be to just be like, hey guys, you want to do a Dismembered Lord takedown? Cool. All right. You start off, your entire party is ready, you're level 20, and you just play. Just try to kill him. Like, that would just be a fun thing to do over like a holiday break or something. All right. Going. Mason Zilla says, throw your enemies back in time to the Stone Age. 3 Dragonbin books, whom shall I make the check to? Again, that's kind of the long game, you know, that's the idea. And like, we're not fully committing to it, but you know, every year or so, it'd be nice to be able to say, hey, all right, this next book is the Dragongrin Monster Manual. It's the Monstrum Aeternum. Here you go. And again, then over the course of that time, be fine-tuning like maybe some subclasses and stuff for an adventurer's guide. Warmaker 777. So Dead Man's Guide is pure marshmallow fluff. So there are some mechanics, but there are not a lot of player mechanics in the way of classes and subclasses. So there are going to be monsters. There's going to be an alternate travel system. There's going to be like weapon breakage. There's going to be mechanics in the book, but don't expect classes and subclasses. There are going to be backgrounds. So there's going to be plenty of mechanical elements that make this a 5e book, but don't expect to go to the section that says wizard and for there to be like 3 wizard subclasses. Xanathar's did that really well. Wizards has got that covered right now. If we feel like we have anything to say in that arena, we can say it. But for now, we're just trying to deliver people a world that they can play in. Marshmallow is the creation of a world run by evil, says Xanos. Little cylinders of pure sugar. C.A. Hollenbach, what's up? Mason Zill says, achievement unlocked, dismembered by the Lord. Warmaker 777. I think a cool mechanic in a fight with the Dismembered Lord is if everyone is being tossed through time as the fight is going on. For example, one round is in a battle taking place 100 years ago, the next is in another world. So, drop my notes. Got my name on it and everything. Sorry. So, the thing is, there is going to be a sort of a lair action or a legendary action where that happens, taking from Encounter Machine, a podcast we did with Hanker and Fernale, where when you go through different mists of time, it's different timelines. So totally, I think the best opportunity for that is a structure that's very new, and when you go into the mist, it's very old, so the players can kind of go, oh, or vice versa. So totally. Caius says, maybe you did this already, I missed the beginning. If the Dismembered Lord reduces you to 0 hit points, you enter a tortured time loop with no way back. That would be awesome. We're tinkering around with a mechanic where any creature that dies within 120 feet of the Dismembered Lord gives them like 20 hit points. But that would be the best flavor. And Michael Maitland says, are there magical items the heroes can get to help them time travel or nullify Dismembered Lord time travel abilities? Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be part of the fun of trying to fight such a powerful creature, is prepping and getting your magic items ready. And, you know, there's a lady sitting at a red light, and in Florida, you can turn right on red. So everyone's very frustrated at her. Anyway, but prepping and saying, okay, I have this, you know, I have this magic item, I have this, and like watching a monk do like quivering palms, crazy stuff like that. So that is why we statted the Dismembered Lord and how. So So what I think I'll do is tomorrow, I was going to go into detail. I had a question from Mason Zilla. You know what? We actually have, might be an altercation. I know. Hang on one second. All right, I'm back. So Mason Zilla asked me, well, what happens if someone dies in the realm, and what happens if someone dies in Dragon Grain? I think that's worth its own stream tomorrow. So if you're around, tune in tomorrow. And I'm gonna try to do these kind of on the dot, as close to 2 o'clock as possible every day, because then you can plan for it and you can know when it's gonna happen. So the idea is 2 o'clock every weekday when I can to do a stream and just make it something that consistently is there. Let's go. Make it something that you can plan for, something that maybe even I make events for. I don't want to annoy people by making an event every day. It's like, oh, 2 o'clock. But at the same time, I've had a couple of people ask, hey, can you make an event for this? Because I forget, or I don't know that you're going live until you're live, and then I'm busy, or things like that. So, all right. Oh, Xanos has a killer idea. Maybe the Dismembered Lord has one final magical ability that ages you at D100. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Dr. Professor says, just turn, lady. It really was. She was sitting there on her cell phone. I could see it was pretty brutal. Warmaker 7, if you don't mind me asking this for a future video, could faith be a future topic? Writing a book at the moment and have been struggling it with a bit. Not things like gods, more like Buddhism, Luciferianism, etc. It depends, because I don't know. I mean, I could stream on that and about how there's really the existence of the gods is unproven in Dragon Grin, but I'm not really an expert in that area. Why don't you do this? Message me some questions, some specific questions, and I will be happy to try to answer those for sure. Because also, on that kind of thing, it's not really, I don't convert those one-to-one into an RPG setting. So if you're saying like in real life, then yeah, we can have a conversation about that. I probably wouldn't stream it here, but if you're saying like in game, I have a different sort of method that I use to plant religions in games, is the idea. And so we're in a, hang on one second. What's that? The health department. Come up here. Make a right at the stoplight. Yep. It's about 3 miles up on your left. All right? Dude's asking me where the health department is. I heard him shouting, going, hey, hey. But I generally don't engage that sort of behavior because it often ends in someone putting me in an uncomfortable position. Anyway, so I gave him directions. But anyway, Warmaker 777, whose name I keep saying even though I said I wasn't going to. Yeah, if you send me some questions, like specific questions, dude, we can get it down on that topic. And again, is it like, you mean like for real, or if you mean like in RPGs, because it's two different discussions, which we can have either one, just through different platforms. Yeah. Michael says, get your walk on. Does the Dismembered Lord have a mount? So he kind of has to, right? At least some version of him, especially like inspired by because that's a really good question, and I've thought about it. Inspired by the Corruptor from the Provokers. Like, one of his most amazing aspects was his Griffin mount. Like, that was so cool. So I think the way we were going to handle it was essentially one mount, one really good, like, cool, awesome, like how He-Man has Battle Cat, like that kind of thing. And then stat that one out with options of reskinning, that sort of thing. Rob from Performance Check said Tim had a random encounter. A serf seeks the health department. Oh, guys, well, I'm going to end it here. I love you. Thank you for hanging out. This has been amazing. We'll do it again tomorrow. We're going to talk about the Wailing Gray, the afterlife in Dragongrin. And what does that look like? And what happens if someone dies in a world where time has stopped? Oh, it's going to be interesting. Anyway, you're amazing. May you mend the first break. May you kill the first snake. And may you conquer everything you undertake. Sláinte, and until next time, may your dice roll high.